Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stolyarov II, and I am the chairman of the US Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our U.S. Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon of Sunday, May 12th, 2024. Today, we have a bit of a different presentation in store for you in regard to a computer game that we have been working on since 2020. And I will give a bit of background about LEV the game before we go into the actual demonstration. But in the meantime, if you are in the chat, please suggest a name, an age, and a gender for the character that we will be playing with in the demonstration. So this can be any adult age, and the gender can be male, female, or agender for anyone who wants to create a non-binary character. But this game actually originated in 2014. There was a different team of people led by Anthony Lamot, and the game itself had a slightly different set of mechanics from the version that will be demonstrated today. It was a real-time rather than a turn-based game, and the selections were more limited than the version that will be demonstrated today. However, the goal was the same, which is to reach longevity escape velocity, essentially a period in time where one's remaining life expectancy becomes open-ended because of advances in medical technologies and rejuvenation. So one starts with a character in the present day, and one makes choices in regard to how to use one's time and one's energy. And those choices affect the probability of survival or the probability of death. So with that as the background, what happened in 2014 was that Anthony Lamot and his team tried to crowdfund for LEV the game, and I was one of the contributors. However, they did not meet their goal. And so they developed an alpha version of the game that was playable. However, they did not proceed beyond that. And I played the alpha version and I reviewed it quite favorably. Aubrey de Grey also reviewed it quite favorably. But no subsequent version was developed. And since that time, unfortunately, the original source code was lost. So I and several other Transhumanist Party officers had a conference call with Anthony Lamot in 2020, and he essentially gave us permission and all of the rights to continue development of LEV the game, as well as all of the graphical assets that had been produced up to that time. And we have used some of them, though we have created many other assets as well. And he essentially said the source code was lost, so feel free to redesign the game and introduce different mechanics. He essentially said the original game wasn't really scientific in terms of the events or the probabilities assigned. It was meant more as a conceptual illustration of longevity escape velocity, how it might come about, the fact that it's not a singular instantaneous process. You don't take a pill to become immortal. It's always a continual set of choices that you make in utilizing the technologies that are available at the time. So with that, we are going to start our demonstration. And it's interesting because we have two suggestions for characters, one from Mike Lazine, female character age 25, and from Daniel Tweed, a character called Galaxy Hugger, who is a 63-year-old male. So I am going to use my discretion and select the 63-year-old male galaxy hugger. The reason why is this is going to be a harder game. So some of the challenges of playing as a 63-year-old male are going to be illustrated as well. And we don't know if our character is going to survive, but let's give it a shot and see how far we can take him. So here is the interface for the game. It's fairly straightforward to start with, and really right now only the play feature is available. So I'll select play, and you can see here on the interface, you can enter the name, the age, the gender, and the goal age. So we will do Galaxy Hugger. Daniel put it all as a contiguous name. So he is 63. He is a male. Now, male probabilities of death are higher at every age than female or agender probabilities. And I actually use the 2018 CDC, Centers for Disease Control, life tables to essentially provide the initial probabilities for the game. Now, we will set a goal age of 200. I think that will be a sufficiently concise playthrough for purposes of this demonstration. And now we've got all of this set up, and we can start the game. So here's Galaxy Hugger, and the year is 2023. So this is actually 1 year ago. This was when the initial specifications were provided to our programmer, Juraj Štern-Vukotić, who essentially put together all of this that we see here. And you can see here, the character's biological age right now is equal to his chronological age, 63. And you can also see that he has a certain survival probability of making it to the next year. And this is actually based off of CDC life tables. So 98.5781% probability of surviving to the next year, 1.4219% probability of death. So by the time one is 63, that probability is already concerningly high. Then we have energy, which is the currency of the game, and how much the energy accumulates per turn. So the default energy accumulation is 10, and he has 10 energy stored up. He's working full time right now, and this is going to have an effect on the energy accumulation as well. So we've got some choices that the character can make, and he can do a fitness regimen. He can dedicate himself to a strict fitness regimen, improving physical health for the rest of his life. He can choose improved nutrition. He can dedicate himself to a strict, healthy nutrition plan. Whatever your theory of an optimal diet is, the game is agnostic as to that, but it will work if you choose improved nutrition. He can choose a productivity regimen and improve his mental health and productivity for the rest of his life. Risk aversion is a choice, so he will dedicate himself to avoiding risks, eliminating the chance of death from falling, poisoning, homicide, alcohol, HIV/AIDS, drowning, and drug use for the rest of his life. And these probabilities are also contributed to the overall death probability. And he can choose to do nothing and accumulate energy. And there are various forms of advocacy as well. So there's anti-aging advocacy, automation advocacy, nanotechnology advocacy, anti-cancer advocacy, nuclear disarmament advocacy, public health advocacy. This is, for instance, useful for averting pandemics, anti-war advocacy, and disaster prevention advocacy. So the cost of these in terms of energy is provided here. And then also you can build a fallout shelter, because nuclear wars can happen in this game. World wars can happen with or without nuclear weapons. And this fallout shelter is expensive, but it decreases the probability of death during world wars before nuclear disarmament. And it's interesting too, because males of biological ages 16 to 40 are more vulnerable in world wars. They can die at a higher rate because they might be drafted into the military or otherwise have to fight. And this is also configured. So we're trying to add elements of realism to the game to the extent that is possible. Now, also an interesting feature of the game is if you scroll here, you can see the breakdown of the death probability. You can hover over this display, and you can see this base probability of death, 1.4219%, is broken down. There's a certain chance of suicide death. That's fairly low, but it's there. Cancer death, vehicle accident death, risk death. So that's from risky behaviors, because Galaxy Hugger isn't risk averse yet. And then there's this other death. Now, this other death, it's interesting because that probability is over 1% right now. That's death from all of the other diseases, including the diseases of aging. And so that's the probability that is most modifiable over time as the character ages. And we will see what happens to this probability as the game progresses. All right, so I've explained the mechanics. Now, let's make some choices for Galaxy Hugger in 2023. And I'm going to be monitoring the chat. So anybody who wants to suggest a choice, please suggest a choice. But I'm going to take the first choice that's suggested. So what do we want to do with Galaxy Hugger? Do we want to give him better fitness? Do we want to make him risk averse? Should he do nothing? Should he engage in some advocacy? We have 10 energy this turn, so not all of these options are accessible yet, but what do we want to do with him? And let's see, Daniel, since he is your invention.
Well, so how many coins do I have to spend on these options? Is that there's a budget?
10, and you gain 10 per turn. Something interesting will also happen.
Okay. Like passing go, getting $200 every time you pass go. So I've not seen them all at a glance. You have to scroll, which maybe you want to fix that. Like have icons that are more infographic-y or something. You can see them all at once. Maybe
user interface. The user interface is open to modification, and this will actually be one of the revisions in subsequent versions of the game. So Jason says he would do fitness first, and Corche agrees with him. So do you want to undertake a fitness regimen for Galaxy Hugger?
That's probably a reasonable option. A lot of people would start with. So yeah, let's roll the dice there.
Okay, so he's 63. He's undertaking a new fitness program, and let's go on to the next year. Okay, so we see now the year has advanced to 2024. Galaxy Hugger used a fitness regimen, but he also spent 5 energy working to earn a living because he's still of working age and he needs to make money. He is not wealthy. And he can accumulate energy over time. That might change his situation, but we'll see what happens. But note, the death probability actually declined. So now it's 1.0341%, and his biological age has been reduced. So even though his chronological age is 64, his biological age is now 61. So he's 3 years younger than his biological age. So the exercise did something good for him. And you can see now the base probabilities have been affected. The chance of other death has been reduced. And there's now a multiplier that applies to it of 75%. So the exercise really helped him. But he's not immortal. He hasn't reached longevity escape velocity, and he now has more choices in 2024. But he only has 6 energy. Note, the energy accumulation increased a little bit from the exercise. He has a bit more productive capability as well. So that was a good choice. But what can we do with 6 energy? We can do nothing, or we can do one of the advocacy types. So let us see what you would like to do here. Nothing or advocacy. And if advocacy, which type? Anti-aging, automation, nanotech, anti-cancer, nuclear disarmament, public health, anti-war, or disaster prevention?
So I got a question. So he's got one more energy accumulation now? The exercise gives him more energy? Well, yes. I don't know. I probably want to shoot for the stuff that gets you more energy sooner, and then you have more energy to spend later is what I'd probably go for. I don't know which ones would do that, but that'd be my
productivity regimen would do that, but you don't have enough energy to select it just yet. And You can choose to do nothing, and that increases how much energy you save up. You don't gain any benefits. You still have to work to earn a living, but that may be an option for now. Or the advocacy affects probabilities of events in the world. So you can choose to do one of those.
So if you advocate for something, conceivably it moves the LEV year closer rather than farther, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
It definitely could. Now, Mike Lazine chose nanotechnology advocacy, and I've said I'm taking the first choice, so Galaxy Hugger is kind of the outcome of our collective decisions here. So we'll do nanotech. We'll do nanotech advocacy in 2024.
Good.
Okay, so interesting. The log says we did nanotech advocacy. He spent 5 energy units working to earn a living. Now he has 7 saved up. In 2025, a cure for cancer is finally discovered. All of the previous year's anti-cancer advocacy has finally paid off. So this is, of course, a probabilistic event. And you can see a nice illustration here. This cure is packaged up in a bottle with a bow on top of it. But this is a big deal because, look, the death probability is now 0.7959%. His biological age hasn't decreased. He's 62 biologically. But if you hover over it, and you can click on this to dismiss the picture, if you hover over it, now the cure for cancer provides a negative modifier. So this is an additive modifier to the overall probability. And now it's been taken away because of the cure for cancer. So cancer is one of the greatest risk factors for death, especially for people of older ages and definitely past 60. It's a huge risk factor. So now that's been taken away. And it's interesting because in 2 years, we've cut Galaxy Hugger's probability of death almost in half. So we've done well for now. We've got 7 energy and still 11 energy accumulation. And Corchet says, theoretically, nanotechnology in its most extreme form solves all medical problems. Perhaps, but we're not there yet in the game. We still have quite a bit of time to go. It's 2025. We were fortunate in this timeline to discover a cure for cancer. So what are we going to do next? We can still do nothing. We can do one of the remaining advocacies. We still don't have enough for risk aversion. We might next turn. So any choices? Again, I'll take the first choice that's put forth.
I say do nothing.
Do nothing. Okay, Art Ramon, we will do nothing. We will accumulate energy. Maybe Galaxy Hugger is resting on his laurels. So let's do nothing and see how that turns out. So Galaxy Hugger did spend 5 energy working to earn a living. His energy accumulation now is still 11, but he has 13 energy saved up. His probability of death increased by a little bit because he got 1 year older. And at this advanced stage, essentially, each year makes a fairly significant difference in terms of probability of death. So this is something to watch. It's still not nearly as high as it was when we started. So we've got 13 energy. We can now choose risk aversion or any of the forms of advocacy, or we can again do nothing. So again, I'll take the first choice.
I think the anti-aging advocacy is pretty relevant. I'd maybe jump into that cause.
That's a good choice. And that costs 5 energy. So let's see what happens. Okay, so now we've got something interesting here because you can see this option for gene therapies has become available. And it says, in 2027, a SENS breakthrough is made in gene therapies. The ability to purchase a gene therapy treatment is now available. So this is nice. And we are going to perhaps utilize that later on. And Mike now says, for the next choice, risk aversion. So Let's do risk aversion and see what happens. Okay, so a lot of events have happened this year, and this is really an accelerated timeline. So this doesn't typically happen this early on in the game, but it happened here. So in 2027, Galaxy Hugger used risk aversion. We'll explore the implications of that. But also, in 2028, the AI singularity has finally been reached. Is this the start of the end, or is this the first step towards utopia? Energy generation increases by 200%. Probability of future advances increases by 300%. The probability of pandemics is reduced by 0.05 or 5% per year. But the probability of world wars increases by 0.1 or 10% per year. So there are going to be some human AI conflicts, or AI is going to be used to enable the great powers to wreak more destruction. So the AI singularity in this game is a bit of a double-edged sword, and this is going to be an interesting game. I will say this is not what we typically encounter, but I think it's great for this demonstration. So now we've got a lot more energy accumulation happening. He's still working full time. We can dismiss this AI android image and see what's happening with the death probability. So we can see with risk aversion, Galaxy Hugger will no longer commit suicide. He has an additional subtractive benefit due to risk aversion. And then, of course, the cure for cancer is working in his favor. He still has a chance of dying in a vehicle accident. And the other death probability is still becoming higher. So he's still aging. He's now biologically 65. That could be a concern. So Corchet mentions that productivity regimen will be available soon. And I wonder, do we want to save up for the productivity regimen, or can we do something else? We can do more advocacy, or we can do nothing. We have more energy accumulation now, though, and that's something to keep in mind as well, given this very interesting turn of events with the AI singularity. So again, I'll take the first choice. All right. And Juraj says the AI singularity only had initially a 0.01% chance per year. So this is indeed a very remarkable game. But I will take the next choice that's offered. So, Corchet, yes, go ahead, Dan.
Oh, I was just wondering why there's not a cryonics option.
We were thinking about a cryonics option. The issue is with a single-player game, what that would mean is you put the character in suspension, and then a bunch of time passes, and then you resume playing. But it really would be most interesting in a multiplayer game, and we are thinking about a multiplayer option eventually. But we want to get the single-player setup done as far as we can. So we do
for a display that shows the target year for LEV as part of the game. I guess not really at this point.
Well, there's a target age, but LEV is a function of the technology that's available. So Emma Astos suggests a productivity regimen. We can't quite do that yet. So do we do nothing to accumulate some energy, or do we do some advocacy?
What would preventing asteroid strikes fall into?
This would be disaster prevention advocacy. So let's do that, and let's see what happens. Okay, so we did disaster prevention advocacy, and he had to work to earn a living, but now we have enough energy for the productivity regimen. And now let's select that. Let's select the productivity regimen and look at that. So several things have changed. He is now partially retired. His chronological age is 70. So essentially he doesn't have to work as much. He saved some resources. His productivity regimen improved his energy accumulation to 24. It used to be 22. And we have another breakthrough for allotopic expression of 13 proteins. So we have 2 SENS technologies now available. And his death probability is getting up there. So it's now 1.138%. So what do we want to do? Do we want to undertake any of the longevity treatments now?
Well, now we can afford nutrition improvement. So
yes, we can do that too.
Nutrition, definitely.
Yeah, so, okay, we've got nutrition. People in the chat suggested gene therapy. So we can do both. We'll do nutrition first and see what that does. Okay, so nutrition helped. And now the probability of death is just a little bit below 1%. We see the multiplier has decreased for other deaths. So improved nutrition has helped somewhat. And the biological age has been reduced as well. It's now 66. But, again, he's not immortal. He hasn't reached longevity escape velocity. He still needs to work to earn a living. So now we can do gene therapy. Let's see what happens. So, some news. In 2032, autonomous vehicles are widely deployed throughout the roads of the world and become highly effective at eliminating deaths from road traffic accidents. And here we have a nice self-driving car. And he did use gene therapy. So, what has happened? We note the probability of death has decreased, even though his biological age is 67. And this is because, first of all, the autonomous vehicles have eliminated the probability of death from accidents, and the multiplier has reduced once again. So that was the benefit of the gene therapy. And now we've got 32 energy, 24 energy accumulation. We can do the other longevity treatment that's available, the allotopic expression of 13 proteins, or we can do any of the forms of advocacy, or we can do nothing. So any preference?
Well, I'd try that gene allotropic expression thing. Seems like a good personal longevity thing, because hey, we're getting up there. Better like not wait around too long.
Let's do that. And then Mike suggests doing anti-war advocacy, so that will be our choice for the subsequent turn. Okay, so several important developments. First of all, the 2 SENS technologies have been applied and they synergize together. Is this the first step toward longevity escape velocity? He still had to work. He spent 3 energy to earn a living. And we've got a new breakthrough made in senolytics. So the ability to purchase senolytics is now available. What happened to his biological age? It's now 63. So the synergy of the 2 longevity treatments have actually reduced his biological age. The multiplier for other causes of death has decreased. And now the death probability is the lowest it has been for him. So he's doing pretty well. He's the same biological age that he was when we started, and this is 2033. So again, an accelerated timeline for rejuvenation, I think, compared to our world, but we'll take it. And anti-war advocacy is next, per Mike's recommendation. So what happened here, we did anti-war advocacy. Now his death probability is a little higher at 0.68. We have a new breakthrough in 2034 in small molecule interventions. So we've got some options here. We can do senolytics. We can do small molecule interventions. We can build a fallout shelter now. We've got enough energy for that. And we can do any of the types of advocacy. So any recommendations?
I'm probably offering too many suggestions, but go fallout shelter.
Let's do fallout shelter, and then Corshey says senolytics after that, so we can do that. Yeah, nuclear war can happen in this game, so a fallout shelter may be prudent, but look at this. We have a lot of new developments in 2035. So first of all, Theoretical advances in nanotechnology improve the annual probability of nanorobots arising to 0.01 or 1%. Significant advances in artificial intelligence are placing artificial general intelligence within reach. Well, we've already had an AI singularity. The annual probability of highly functional AI assistants increases to 0.1. And indeed, this probability has been realized because in 2035, advances in automation enable AI assistants to become available to the general public. They can be obtained for 20 energy units, so that's now an option. And we got a worldwide nuclear disarmament treaty in 2035. The advocacy of individuals such as Galaxy Hugger has convinced the leaders of all countries that eliminating remaining nuclear weapons stockpiles is an important safeguard for preventing devastation. As a result, all death probabilities from any future hypothetical world war will be reduced by half. So here we have this dilapidated nuclear missile. It's obviously not going to be launched at anyone. And I think the people of the world came to their senses with an AI singularity having happened. We don't want to have a bunch of nuclear weapons around for humans or AGIs to launch. So that Galaxy Hugger is a persuasive guy, says Corchet. Indeed, he is. He is. So the next recommendation is going to be senolytics. Let's look at the death probability. In terms of what affects it, it's pretty much what it was before, but his biological age is again up at 65. So senolytics might be a good idea. Let's apply senolytics and see what happens. Okay, so he now has the benefit of 3 sense technologies that have synergized together. His biological age is down to 64 again. Death probability is again lower than it has been before, 0.5808, so pretty good. We've reduced the multiplier for other causes of death. So now what can we do? We can obtain an AI assistant. We can obtain small molecule interventions and still do any of these types of advocacy: anti-aging, nanotech, anti-war, disaster prevention, or automation. So what would you like to do? AI assistant, says Mike Lazine. Galaxy Hugger will get an AI assistant. So now his energy accumulation is pretty high. It's 29, and he's got ample energy. His death probability is 0.6305, so it's climbing. His biological age is 65. So he's been fairly stable in terms of his biological age, but he's still biologically in his 60s. So think about what you want to do next.
I just have to point out, are these, you buy it once and you get it from then on, or don't you have to renew these on an annual basis? Is that taken into account in the game?
You get these kinds of technological interventions once until you reach a certain point in the game. And hopefully we'll get to see what that is. But for something like the small molecule interventions, which Corchet recommended, you can do it once. And this will provide some lasting benefits for you. Now, this is still a partial intervention. Hence, his biological age is 65, even though he's had a bunch of treatments done already. So, he used small molecule interventions.
The fitness is ongoing. We haven't stopped that since we bought it.
Oh, the fitness is ongoing. He is a lifelong fitness devotee. And he's also a lifelong healthy eater. He's risk averse for life. He's productive for life. The AI assistant is there to help him. So he's doing pretty well. 0.6369% probability. Again, we've reduced the other causes of death multiplier. He has 43 energy, and we have a new SENS breakthrough made in 2038 for stem cell therapies. So we have that as an option. We have any of the types of advocacy as an option. What do we want to do?
Let's go with the stem cell.
Okay, we are going to give him a stem cell treatment. Okay, so 5 SENS technologies have been applied. They synergize together, granting additional benefits. And his death probability is now down to 0.3692. His biological age is down to 62. He's younger than when we started the game. And his death probability is a lot lower than when we started the game. So the world is a healthier, safer place to live now. And we've got some types of advocacy that we can do, or he can relax and do nothing. We can do more anti-aging advocacy, nanotech, anti-war, disaster prevention, or automation.
What does automation do? Well, I mean, wouldn't the singularity have handled a lot of these things by now? I mean,
yes.
You need to fix that.
Well, the singularity has happened fairly early, but Mike Lazine says automation, so automation it is. And probability of death increased a little bit. Corchet says anti-aging advocacy. Let's do that. Okay, so what happened in 2041? The world's governments agree on a fundamental human right to a universal basic income, and so all energy expenditure from working is now reduced by 3. So that's nice. And we've got this graphic with some money flowing to people. And now death probability is 0.4172. So we can do more advocacy. Automation advocacy is gone now because the universal basic income probability is affected by automation advocacy. So XP asks, is there any benefit to having such a high stockpile of energy? Yes. We can watch and see what happens if you get to 100 energy. So that will happen the next turn, whatever choice we make. So any type of advocacy that we want to do. Let's see.
When do we get to join the extraterrestrial galactic uplift community?
We don't have those events in the game yet, but it's possible to consider them because as time advances in the game, more interesting things could happen. As our technology develops, we might develop the ability to more effectively contact other civilizations. Mike Lazine says nanotech advocacy again, so let's do that. And look at this. Now, Galaxy Hugger is retired. He doesn't have to work for a living. His energy is over 100. So if your energy exceeds a certain threshold, you don't have to work for a living anymore, or you don't have to work as much. And now he's fully retired, so he doesn't spend the 3 energy working to earn a living. And Uri in our chat says you can live off of your savings after he gets 100 energy. So he will go into full retirement and does not need to work anymore. So now he's biologically 65 again. We've got the 4 types of advocacy. What are we going to do? Because he is still aging. His death probability is lower than it used to be, but it is creeping up again.
So when the death probability goes to 0, that's LEV. That's longevity escape velocity.
Well, LEV is not going to have an exact 0 probability of death, but there will be a moment in the game, if he lives that far, where he will reach LEV. But we've got some advocacy we could be doing: anti-aging, nanotech, anti-war, or disaster prevention. So what can we do? What do you want us to do? Anti-aging advocacy, says Mike Lazine, so let's do that. All right, so we did engage in some anti-aging advocacy. No world events happened, so what next? Anti-aging, nanotech, anti-war, or disaster prevention?
I kind of been toward the disaster prevention side of things.
We haven't done that yet, so let's do some of that. And Francois Joanneau also says disaster prevention, so let's do that twice. Okay, so we have nanorobots now available. In 2045, nanorobots are developed for medical applications and made widely available to consumers. So the earlier comment about nanotechnology was a bit prescient. They can be purchased for 30 energy units for anyone with nanorobots circulating in the bloodstream. All subsequent SENS technologies and rejuvenation therapies have an additional 10% reduction in probability of death and reduce biological age by another 5 years. So do we want to get some nanorobots for 30 energy, or do we want to engage in the remaining types of advocacy? So nanotechnology advocacy has succeeded. We now have 3 options for advocacy: anti-aging, anti-war, and disaster prevention. So
yeah, I'd vote for the nanorobots. Then you don't really need cryonics, by the way.
yes, the nanorobots can repair damage, so let's see what happens. Okay, so we did use some nanorobots, but we have some bad news.
Uh-oh.
In 2046, World War III has broken out. The tremendous devastation of the war leads to the annual probability of death for males of biological ages 16 to 40 to increase by 0.015, and that's down from 0.03 because we have nuclear disarmament. And the probability of death for everyone else increases by 0.005, so 0.5%, and that's down from 1% due to nuclear disarmaments. So World War III is pretty bad, and we see a scene of devastation. Let's look at the probability breakdown here. So
that's not my fallout shelter, right?
Yes, and essentially we have this additive component to probability of death from the World War. And you can see here for Galaxy Hugger, because he's older, it's 0.5%. But that's now part of it, whereas it wasn't before. But it's interesting because of all of the advances that happened. He is a bit fitter. He is a bit healthier. He can dodge some bullets more effectively. So there is a contribution to his survival chances from the prudent choices that he made before. But he has a 0.9% chance of dying now. So we have some advocacy. We can still advocate for anti-aging breakthroughs, or anti-war advocacy might be helpful here because we're in a war, or disaster prevention advocacy again. So one of the 3 advocacies is
anti-war.
Anti-war. Let's do that. Okay. So he did use anti-war advocacy, but World War III continues into 2047. So it wasn't enough.
Could we buy like $200 worth of anti-war?
Well, you can make one choice per turn at present. Otherwise, the game might become a bit too easy.
I thought you could put all your poker chips in, like one thing.
John H. wonders, but can he dodge actual bullets? That would be handy. Well, I think he isn't quite at that level yet, but he might be able to maneuver his way out of certain situations. But we've got now an almost 1.1% probability of death. War is still ongoing. Do we want to do more anti-war advocacy or one of the other types of advocacy?
Well, I'd keep the anti-war going.
Okay.
Did it say the war ended? No.
No, the war is still ongoing.
Oh.
So it's a long war. It started in 2046. It's now 2048. It's still happening. And Mike Lazine says he is not like Neo in the Matrix yet, or one of the Flash family members. No, we're not that far advanced yet. So he's a bit rejuvenated. He's biologically 71 now, by the way. His probability of death is going up. Francois Joanneau says, during war, you just make the right choice like Einstein did. Okay, so I'll take that as a recommendation for more anti-war advocacy. Let's see what happens. This is a long war, and the death probability is creeping up too. So let's see. Do we want to keep going with the anti-war advocacy?
Are we fighting humans or non-humans in this war?
Well, here's the thing. An AI singularity has been reached. This is a kind of art-elect war situation. So Terrans versus Cosmos. Let's say Hugo de Garis's prediction came true, and there are some disgruntled humans who don't like the prevalence of AGIs, and they've decided to take matters into their own hands. So we might be able to do something about that, but do we want to do more anti-war advocacy?
I probably would.
Okay, let's do that. Okay, we're still in World War III. This is a long war.
We're not advocating enough.
We need to think outside the box. So
Someone needs
Corche says it seems like World War III would result in nuclear rearmament. Fortunately for this game, nuclear rearmament is not a possibility. We can have a situation where we eliminate the risk of war, but then the probability again becomes non-zero because an AI singularity is reached, but we've already reached the AI singularity. Let's just say the probability of war per year is quite high. And I think the best option for our survival is more anti-war advocacy. So let's do that. Okay, so something good happened here. In 2051, a peace treaty was signed to finally conclude World War III, and the additional probability of death subsides. So you note his death probability decreased. We have a nice representation of world peace here. And if we look at the breakdown, now the World War additive contribution is not present. But his death probability is above 1.08%. His biological age is 74. His chronological age is 91. So he's doing all right, but it's starting to be concerning again. We still have anti-aging advocacy as an option, more anti-war advocacy, or disaster prevention advocacy. So what do we want to do?
Just a side comment. How are you calculating that biological age? Is that DNA methylation, which isn't cheap, by the way? That's like about, I think, what, $1,000 to get that done, or?
So the game is a bit agnostic as to how biological age is calculated, but the fact is he is equivalent to what today's 74-year-olds would be like. Mike Lazine says disaster prevention. So let's see here. Okay, so we did successfully use disaster prevention advocacy. There's still a risk of disasters. Corche says anti-aging advocacy, so let's do that. Okay, and now it's 2053. He's biologically 76, chronologically 93. What types of advocacy do we want to do? Anti-aging, anti-war, or disaster prevention? And John H. wonders, so the only 2 people left alive signed a peace treaty. It was probably more than that. Now, this is still a more rational world because they did choose to ban nuclear weapons for all of their Terran cosmist hostilities. They don't want to blow up all of civilization. Francois says anti-war advocacy. Oh, okay, this is bad. Galaxy Hugger just died of natural causes. So this can happen in the game. And unfortunately, we did not get enough rejuvenation technologies to get him to longevity escape velocity. So he had 5 out of the 7 sense technologies, but 2 of the 7 had not been developed yet. So his biological age remained stubbornly high, and he even died in peacetime. So Jason says, cue trombone sound. Actually, Uri has an interesting sense of humor. There's a lullaby that plays that I composed if the character dies. And there is music in the game. There are sound effects in the game. They're just not playing for the purposes of this demonstration. But if you play the game on your own, you will have sound effects and music. So
another feature you might add is here's a list of people you have outlived, and here's a list of people you have not yet outlived. If you want to add like a celebrity component.
Yes.
You know?
I think that's great. That's great because when I turned 36, I began to quip that by the time Mozart was my age, he was dead. Yeah. But anyway, there's an option here where one can export the log of the game. And we can do that here. So I'll just say this is the LEV playthrough for Galaxy Hugger. We will memorialize Galaxy Hugger in this way. So all of these events are going to be saved to a text file. And one can look at the text file and the history of this world and this life. So
you sort of visit the Galaxy Hugger avatar ride at Disney World.
Yes, Galaxy Hugger. He is no more. He has perished in 2053. So this is Galaxy Hugger in 1960 to 2053. But he made a valiant effort. So we have time to play again, and we have Mike's recommendation for a 25-year-old female. So I think that's actually a good option.
Better luck, girl. Can I ask you a question? What percent of the game is random and what percent is like fact-based? Would you say it's 50-50 or?
Well, I would say all of the probabilities that affect causes of death in the present or near future have some basis in actual life tables. But the future advances, the effects of the longevity therapies, obviously I had to make some assumptions because we don't really know what each treatment is going to do. But the idea is they do have an effect on biological age and they do synergize. So we need a name for our female character. Who would like to suggest a name? Again, I will take the first reasonable name that's suggested. Any thoughts about naming this female character? 25-year-old female. Hopefully she has good chances of reaching longevity escape velocity. Mike Lazine says Dorothy Gail. Okay, we can name her Dorothy Gail. Okay, so we are back in 2023. She's working full-time. She has 10 energy units, 10 energy accumulation. So what do we do for Dorothy? She can do a fitness regimen. She can be risk averse. She can do nothing. She can do advocacy. By the way, Juraj points out, this is correct. You can use more energy than you've accumulated. There are some effects to that, though. So if you want to give her a productivity regimen, we can try and we can see what happens. She has a very low probability of death because she's biologically 25, by the way.
So can you do the nutrition regimen and go negative?
Yes, we can do. We can actually do negative energy, but we have some recommendations. So Mike says fitness regimen, you said nutrition regimen, and Francois says anti-war advocacy. So let's do a fitness regimen for her. Okay, so she's biologically 23. Her probability of death is even lower now. She still has to spend energy earning a living, so she's got 6 energy. Let's see what happens if we select improved nutrition and how that affects her probability of survival. Okay, so she's biologically 22 now. She's got -3 energy. And let's just say we don't want the energy to stay negative for long. But autonomous vehicles have been widely deployed throughout the roads of the world, and they've become highly effective at eliminating deaths from road traffic accidents. So she's got a fairly low probability of death now, certainly lower than Galaxy Hugger. The autonomous vehicles reduce the probability of death. She's got a lower multiplier now because of fitness and improved nutrition. She's 5 years younger than her chronological age. John H. wonders if this is a vegan diet. The type of diet is not specified because I don't want to favor any of the fashionable theories on diet. We really don't know, but she's eating healthily. So she's not eating like the average American. She's doing a better job. So anti-war advocacy is next. And let's see what happens there. So, oh, she can't do that because her energy is negative. So we'll have to do nothing and we'll have to save up. So in 2026, a SENS breakthrough is made in small molecule interventions, and that will now be available to consumers. So now we've got perhaps the possibility to do some anti-war advocacy. Let's see.
Well, I say if you did the small molecule and you could do it once and go into the negative. I mean, it's just a credit card.
Yes. But here's what happened. Here's what happened. If you go negative with your energy and you stay there for too long, she has aged an additional year due to debt-related stress. And she still spends energy earning a living. She did use some anti-war advocacy. Her energy is positive again, but we need to be a bit careful. So chances are, if she uses the small molecule interventions, she could help herself, but her energy will go negative. So what do we want to do? Stress is a killer, says Bruce Davis. It could be. Yes, and there is a means by which the game reflects that. So do we want to do small molecule interventions? Do we want to do one of the advocacy types, or do we want to do nothing? Public health, says Francois. Okay, so we will do that. Public health advocacy. Oh, she's aged another year due to debt-related stress. So this is because she's spending the energy. So she's spending 5 units of energy per year working to earn a living. And Mike says public health again. So let's do that. Okay, so she's no longer stressed out. She has a positive energy buffer, so she's not aging faster than the usual rate. Zach says there should be a shady drug dealer you can buy black market rapamycin from, but there's a small percentage you get shot by the police for buying black market rapamycin. That's an interesting suggestion. I will just say that. But let's see what we can do next. We can do any of the advocacy types that won't stress her out, or we can do something more costly that will result in an energy deficit. Any suggestions?
What about the risk aversion?
Yes. Let's do risk aversion. Okay. So she's got 4 energy. No stress yet, because you have to be in an energy deficit for 3 consecutive years to accumulate stress. But the risk aversion has helped her. She no longer has a suicide risk. And there is also a larger risk aversion benefit. So she's not going to die in an accident, essentially. Her biological age is now 29. And John wonders, does working for a living constitute a negative? Yes, this is why she's spending 5 energy units per year to work for a living. So what do we want to do? We can do more advocacy. We can do a productivity regimen, small molecule interventions, or even a fallout shelter, though that will be hugely costly and it will take her like a decade to recover from that.
I think she needs to take a break and do nothing for a while.
Okay. Yeah. Let her rest.
Yeah.
Okay. So she does nothing. She's got 10 energy now. What next? Francois says in France they have a saying that work is health. So, well, you know, sometimes it could be if you're more productive and you're able to achieve more with a lower toll to your health if you figure out how to do that.
Yeah, isn't there kind of a correlation between newly retired people and newly dead people?
There is, because some of them, they become so invested in their work that they lose a sense of meaning and they kind of engage in dissipative activities. But Mike Lazine says do nothing again. And now she's got 16 energy. So John H. also says there's evidence that working except for a job one hates is a plus for one's health. Corchet says moving your body is a universal good. So we can do small molecule interventions. We can do a productivity regimen. Note that her death probability is low because she's in her early 30s and biologically she's even a bit younger than her chronological age. So she has been stressed out, but she's really not doing too badly because she's young. So
I have heard that getting a job you hate is a great motivator for becoming self-employed.
Perhaps.
Then do the automation advocacy then.
Okay, let's do the automation advocacy. This is a slower timeline, so we don't have an AI singularity yet. Anti-war advocacy, says Mike Lazine. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so we've got some breakthroughs here. We have, in 2034, effective methods of telomere lengthening are discovered, and this becomes an available option. And then we have a breakthrough in stem cell therapies. And again, these interventions, the stem cell therapies, the small molecule interventions, reduce the probability of death at all ages by 10% by themselves. And the telomere lengthening can reduce the biological age by 5 years. So let's see. John H. says, it's said that a major cause of death for older people is retirement. And Zach says he has heard that so much. Well, Dorothy has a long way to go before she can retire. So lengthen telomeres, says Bill Andrews. Okay, let's do this. Okay, so Dorothy is now biologically 29. The telomere lengthening has been effective. And in 2035, we have theoretical advances in nanotechnology that improve the annual probability of nanorobots arising to 0.01. Significant advances in artificial intelligence are placing artificial general intelligence within reach. The annual probability of highly functional AI assistance increases to 0.1. And Ascend's breakthrough is made in gene therapies. So now we can purchase gene therapies. And she has the ability to purchase one of 3 SENS treatments. But
I think
she only has 4 energy. So
she's female, though. She should start considering about having children. I mean, a lot of women do.
So having children is having children is not really a choice within the game. Now, that doesn't mean the character doesn't have children. It's that the game doesn't say anything about her family life. It's just not considered. So I don't know if it should be considered. Among super centenarians, there are some who haven't had any children. There are some who have had numerous children. And for the oldest people, it doesn't really seem to affect their probability of death. Now, it's true women can die in childbirth. Right now, the risk of that is fairly low. So let's see what we've got here. So Francois says public health advocacy. So let's do that. Okay. So in 2036, advances in automation enable AI assistants to become available to the general public. They can be obtained for 20 energy. And it's interesting because she's still a regimen. She doesn't have an AI assistant. Her energy accumulation is close to the baseline. She's still young. She has time, at least from a probabilistic standpoint. So what do we want to do here? And Zach Richardson says the picture of the bricklayer that Bill Andrews uses to illustrate telomere shortening is quite apt. And XP says invest in an AI assistant. So, okay, let's get an AI assistant for Dorothy. She's got -4 energy now. She has stress. And the energy accumulation is higher, though. So maybe she can work her way out of that negative energy position. But she can't do anything right now because her energy is negative. So let's do nothing and proceed to the next year. Okay, so her energy is 7. And her annual energy accumulation is 16, but she spends 5 working to earn a living. What do we want to do? She's 34 biologically, 40 chronologically. So she still has a 6-year advantage over her chronological age. Let's see. Uri writes in the chat, you option, make baby. You get less energy now, but when you retire, they pay it back. Interesting, interesting. that's something to be considered. Mike Lazine says anti-aging, but Francois says productivity regimen. Okay, Francois was first, so we will do a productivity regimen for her. And she invested so much energy in being productive that did cause stress for her. She has 0 energy now, but her annual energy accumulation is 18. So perhaps this will work out for her. We'll see. We'll see. Her death probability is 0.0615% per year, so that's not too bad still. But her next move is anti-aging advocacy. So she does have more stress, and the gap between her biological and chronological age has narrowed to 4. She's got 8 energy. She can select one of the SENS technologies now, or she can do nothing, or she can do one of the forms of advocacy, and they're still all available. So what are we going to do for Dorothy in 2040? Stem cells. Okay, thank you, Mike. So she is experiencing a lot of stress, but her probability of death is still relatively low. The multiplier is coming down because she had a stem cell therapy. So let's see what her next action should be. She's got 1 energy, so she's still kind of on the verge of a stressful life. Any choices? Mike says nothing. Okay, so she is going to rest. And she did not age due to stress, so this is good. She's got 14 energy. What next? The advocacy at this point is not going to cause stress for her. Some of the SENS technologies might still stress her out because
maybe some anti-aging advocacy because she's starting to feel her age.
Anti-aging advocacy, and then she's got 22 energy, and Francois says now she can pursue a gene therapy. So that's probably not going to stress her out anymore. And we see that 2 SENS technologies have been applied and synergized together. Is this the first step toward longevity escape velocity? Note her biological age has decreased again to 38. She's chronologically 46. The death probability is lower now, 0.0585%. So she's got 15 energy, 18 energy accumulation. She could do nothing. She could engage in advocacy. She could take the small molecule interventions. What do we want to do? Anti-cancer advocacy, and both Mike and Francois say anti-cancer advocacy, so we'll do it twice. So first anti-cancer advocacy has been done, and 2045 brings with it significant research advances in artificial general intelligence. Now the probability of an AI singularity each year is increased to 0.001. So the base probability is relatively low, and it continues to be low. There's something that increases it, namely automation advocacy, but we'll do anti-cancer this year. And she is successfully engaged in anti-cancer advocacy. She's now biologically 40. Death probability is still quite low. She can do small molecule interventions without stressing herself out. She can do any of the types of advocacy. We've got small molecule interventions now from Francois. And a cure for cancer has been discovered. So the anti-cancer advocacy has paid off. We now have the option for allotopic expression of 13 proteins. And yes, the cure for cancer has significantly reduced her probability of death. So Bruce says, nice. This is indeed nice. She's 10 years younger than her chronological age in 2047. That's not unrealistic at all. In 2047, there will probably be people who are 10 years younger than their chronological age. So Francois says, let's do the allotopic expression. And universal basic income has been achieved in 2048. So all energy expenditure from working is reduced by 3, and she did benefit from the allotopic expression as well. Her modifier for other causes of death is now under 40%, and she's got 17 energy. She can do advocacy quite safely. She has 18 energy accumulation per turn. Fallout shelters are still available, but expensive. So what is she going to do? Public health, says Mike Lazine. All right. And now she spent 3 energy to earn a living, and her energy is being saved over time. Francois says disaster prevention advocacy. Okay. What next? Her death probability is 0.0501% per year. So not too bad. Anti-aging advocacy, says Corchet. All right, so we have engaged in anti-aging advocacy, but she's still aging, as are we, by the way. So let's see.
I say she keeps doing anti-aging because she's worried about, the lines. So.
All right. Well, she's 43, so not as many lines as a 53-year-old would have. But Francois said nanotechnology first, and then we'll do more anti-aging. So she did nanotech advocacy, and then she will do anti-aging advocacy again. And Francois says fallout shelter. Okay. So yes, she has purchased a fallout shelter, and she has enough energy that she can afford a fallout shelter. It's no longer stressful for her to do all of that planning and set it up. And, well, nuclear war can still happen in this world. So we have various types of advocacy. We can advocate for nuclear disarmament. Also, anti-war advocacy is available. Disaster prevention, public health, automation, anti-aging, nanotechnology. Nanotechnology, says Mike Lazine. Okay. What next? Nuclear disarmament, says Francois. Okay. And we do have a SENS breakthrough that was made in immunotherapeutic clearance in 2056. So we can purchase that, or we can do more advocacy. She is 48 now, biologically.
I say go for it.
Go for immunotherapeutic clearance. Okay. So now 5 SENS technologies have been applied. They synergize together, granting additional benefits. So biologically, she's now 44. Death probability has reduced significantly. So now it's 0.0448. And the other causes of death multiplier is just under 27%. Okay, so we've got more advocacy options here. What will she do next? We can do anti-war, disaster prevention, public health, automation, nuclear disarmament, anti-aging, anti-war, says Francois. Okay. And then we have 2 votes for anti-war, so she'll do 1 more year of anti-war advocacy. Thank you, Mike. Okay, so no notable events in the world according to this log, though, of course, we welcome suggestions for more world events, both near-term and more futuristic world events, because I think that will make the game even more engaging. So we are taking into account any feedback of this sort, but what will she do next? Any thoughts on this? Public health, says Francois. And Bruce says we probably avoided a war. Well, World War III hasn't happened yet either. So that's interesting. I'll take that as a recommendation for more anti-war advocacy. What about an Armageddon meteor for disaster? Well, we have various types of disasters that can randomly occur. And likewise with pandemics. Pandemics can happen in this game too. And a meteor impact could be one possibility. But we don't have anything that wipes out civilization. At least if the character is still alive. Maybe if the character dies from a disaster, then this could be a civilization-ending disaster as well, hypothetically. Disaster prevention again, says Francois. And in 2062, a SENS breakthrough is made in novel lysosomal hydrolases. So we can purchase that for 20, or we can do disaster prevention advocacy or any of the other forms of advocacy. And yes, Zach, we did set the win age at 200. So she's 64 right now. Let's see. So do we get the novel lysosomal hydrolases, or do we do something else for her? Let's see. Novel lysosomal hydrolases, says Francois. And she did apply them. She's got now a biological age of 50, chronological age of 65. So a 15-year gap. Her death probability has now exceeded 0.11%. So being biologically 50 will do that to you, even if you've been rejuvenated to some extent. So I think more will need to be done to get her to LEV. But she's got some advocacy options. So what will she choose? Let's see. Anti-war advocacy, says Mike Lazine. So let's do that. And automation advocacy, says Francois. So let's do that. And then nanotech advocacy, says Bruce. So let's do nanotech here. All right. She needs that 7th sense treatment, says Corchet. Yes, but it needs to be discovered. So for whatever reason, it is 2066 and the 7th sense treatment is not available yet. So that's the thing. We need all of them in order for true rejuvenation. And this is another way in which the game actually simulates reality, because Aubrey de Grey's whole point is you need some effective approaches to counter all types of anti-aging damage. Otherwise, the one or few types that you don't counter will accumulate and will get you. So anti-aging advocacy is selected by Francois. But unfortunately, World War III has broken out in 2067. So Dorothy is not a male of biological ages 16 to 40. So her probability of death increases by 0.01. But there have been some favorable modifiers for her because of her fitness, her good healthy habits, and her rejuvenation treatments. So anyway, we've got World War III on our hands. What is Dorothy going to do? Any advocacy? Anti-war advocacy, says Mike. Okay. She has done some anti-war advocacy, but World War III continues into 2068. So what will she do next?
Does the Fallout shelter reduce her death probability during wartime?
Yes. Yes, it does. So actually, we can see here World War /Fallout shelter. it's a 0.75% probability of death rather than the original 1% probability of death. So we've got some suggestions. First, nuclear disarmament advocacy, then anti-war advocacy. Okay, so we did do some nuclear disarmament advocacy, but the World War still continues into 2069. So we'll do more anti-war advocacy. Let's see here. Okay, we do have a peace treaty signed to finally conclude World War III, and the additional probability of death subsides. So her probability of death is now down to 0.1718%. Her biological age is 57. Her chronological age is 72. So Francois says public health advocacy. So let's do that. And now she's biologically 58. Jason suggests, instead of just having it flash on the screen that you died with no warning, maybe get the character sick first. Maybe they could struggle with a disease for a few years first. That's kind of configured into the probabilities. So really, we don't know if the character is sick or not, because this is the probability for the general population. So that includes healthy people and that includes sick people as well. And if she dies, that means she happened to be sick. At least that's the model that the game is working with. We could think of doing something different from that, but that's essentially the assumption here. So if she dies, she might have been sick a few years ago. So Mike Lazine says nanotechnology advocacy. Let's do that. And then XP asks, does political advocacy increase death probability in the short term, considering possible stress, hostility, and the like? Well, it doesn't increase the probability of death unless your energy goes negative, in which case stress can take a toll and you will age faster. But Francois says political advocacy can be positive too. Yes, it can be motivating. You can learn things. You can perhaps form beneficial connections that can help you out later on. So anti-aging advocacy, says Francois, and she did that. Now she's biologically 60, chronologically 75. Her death probability has exceeded 0.2% per year. What will she do next? We still have that seventh sense technology to be discovered. So who wants to make a selection? Any options? Political, says Mike Lazine. Francois says anti-aging. So how do I interpret political? Because any of these can be political, but probably the war is on people's minds. So I will interpret that as 1 year of anti-war advocacy and then 1 year of anti-aging advocacy. Okay. So now it's 2075. She's biologically 62. What will she do next? Disaster prevention, anti-war, public health, automation, nuclear disarmament, anti-aging, or nanotech. Anti-aging again. Yes, so I think people are getting concerned about her advancing age. Francois says automation advocacy. So, nanorobots are now available. Pretty late, 2077. Nanorobots are developed for medical applications and made widely available to consumers. They can be purchased for 30 energy units. For anyone with nanorobots circulating in the bloodstream, all subsequent sense technologies and rejuvenation therapies have an additional 10% reduction in probability of death. And Mike Lazine wants nanorobots, so they reduce, for subsequent technologies, biological age by another 5 years. So she's gotten nanorobots. They don't reduce her biological age right away. They interact with other technologies. So she's still biologically 65. Nanotechnology advocacy has succeeded. So what will she do next? By the way, this is a good illustration. Even a young person today can, under various timelines, become biologically older and still have this uncertainty about survival. So there's not going to be a magic immortality pill. This is going to be a set of choices that people need to make, including Dorothy Gail in 2078. So what will she do? Disaster prevention, says Francois. Automation, says Mike Lazine. Okay, she's biologically 67. Death probability is 0.3201. So what will she do next? By the way, that's less than the death probability of today's biological 67-year-olds. So she has done some good for her health and her longevity. Any ideas about advocacy that she could do? We still have nuclear weapons in this world. Public health, says Francois. Okay. Anti-aging, says Mike. Okay. We still have a variety of problems in this world of 2082. And again, please feel free to suggest other events that could happen. Nuclear disarmament advocacy.
I've got a thought that it might be nice to have not just the personal survival and death probabilities, but also the species-wide survival and death probabilities. That would be an interesting metric to have side by side.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting suggestion. And Jason says there could be a lot of other little life choices that could be put in that only make the game more interesting, even if it doesn't change the death probability. Yes, I think that's a possibility, just to add some color to the game. And Mike said, save feature to the game. Yes, I think there should be one. I agree. We will work that in. Right now, there's a log, but if you export the log and you quit the game, you don't return to your play session. So Francois says automation advocacy. So let's do that. Ooh, death probability is creeping up. She's biologically 71. She has a 0.61% probability of dying. So what are we going to do about this? Any suggestions? Somehow this seventh sense technology is elusive, but you know, Aubrey says there is a probability that they all will not be discovered for at least 100 years. I think he says there's at least a 10% probability of that. So Mike says nuclear disarmament advocacy first, then anti-aging advocacy from Corchet, automation advocacy from Francois. Okay, so many events in 2087, and a worldwide nuclear disarmament treaty is finally achieved at that late time. The advocacy of individuals such as Dorothy Gail has convinced the leaders of all countries that eliminating remaining nuclear weapons stockpiles is an important safeguard for preventing devastation. As a result, all death probabilities from any hypothetical future world war will be reduced by half. And the AI singularity is here. So, is this the start of the end, or is this the first step toward utopia? Energy generation increases by 200%. Probability of future advances increases by 300%. Probability of pandemics is reduced by 0.05 per year. Notice there's no more public health advocacy because the pandemic probability has been reduced. Probability of world wars increases by 0.1 per year. A SENS breakthrough is made in senolytics. So now we can purchase the senolytics treatment. So do we want to do that? She's got a lot of energy. She's of an advanced biological age now. Yes, so Francois says senolytics. Okay, so what has happened? All 7 of the SENS breakthroughs have been achieved. Decades of dedicated anti-aging advocacy have paved the way toward longevity escape velocity. Nanorobots provide an additional 5-year biological age reduction and 10% reduction in death probability. And after applying all required technologies, rejuvenation therapy 1.0 is now available. So this is the first rejuvenation therapy, the first comprehensive rejuvenation therapy that Dorothy can engage in. Note, her biological age is now 60. Her chronological age is 90. The death probability is 0.1764. So it has plummeted because she had all SENS all 7 of the SENS technologies. And this illustrates the point that you need all of the different types of damage repair in order to truly start to meaningfully reverse biological aging. So Mike and Corchet and Francois, they all say rejuvenation. Okay, they say it 3 times, so let's see what happens. So
3 of them.
Yes, we will do 3 of them. So this is rejuvenation therapy 1.0. Biological age reduced by 10 years, and the nano robots provide an additional 5-year reduction, 10% reduction in death probability. Okay, so she did 1 rejuvenation therapy. Now her biological age is 46. Her death probability is 0.0325%. We're going to do a second one because they said do it 3 times. Okay, her biological age is 27.
Wow.
Her death probability is 0.0144%. Third rejuvenation therapy. Now this one will reduce biological age by 20 years. Nanorobots provide an additional 5-year biological age reduction. Her biological age is 3. Now that does not mean that she has become a child. That means that she has as little damage as a 3-year-old in her body and her cells. So her death probability has become very low. The multiplier for other causes of death is only 8.129%. And Corchet says exponential results. That's good. Bruce is really excited about this as if it happened for real. She wants to... Yes, absolutely. We can do more rejuvenation therapies. Thank you, Bruce. And then we will do anti-war advocacy. Okay, but keep in mind, there is a floor. You can't have negative biological age. So her biological age is 0. Her death probability is very low right now. Francois says anti-war advocacy. And Bruce says anti-war advocacy once again. So there's a lesson here. So her biological age is 2. Her probability of death from aging is now very low. So what is she going to prioritize? Wars and disasters can still happen. And now she's got a long time to live unless she gets killed by a war or a disaster. And the AI singularity has happened. The Terrans and Cosmists are at odds, so there's still risk in this world. Bruce and Francois say disaster prevention advocacy, so we'll do 2 years of disaster prevention advocacy. What can we do now?
Wouldn't you want to buy as many rejuvenation therapies till they're all used up? Or
well, you could. Now, keep in mind, right now, this is a very effective rejuvenation therapy. It reduces biological age by 25 years. And nanorobots are going to provide another 5-year reduction. So if her biological age is 4, it'll be reduced to 0, though. So there's a floor. So there is some consideration here for how to time those rejuvenation therapies. Okay. And this is also going to be realistic, because if you're going to be biologically young for a while, you might not need to come back for another treatment for a few decades. So we've got 2 instances of anti-war advocacy. Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Francois. And now we have Francois saying rejuvenation, so we will take another rejuvenation therapy. Her biological age is 0, and look at this. Congratulations in 2099 on reaching longevity escape velocity. You can now repeat the optimized rejuvenation therapy as many times as your resources allow it. So what are the effects of the optimized rejuvenation therapy? The biological age is reduced by 10. It can be repeated indefinitely. The nanorobots provide an additional 5-year biological age reduction and 10% reduction in death probability. Bruce says we just need 102 more years. Yes, we do for Dorothy. So disaster prevention, says Mike Lazine. Okay, so we've got disaster prevention advocacy. It's 2100 now. So again, we want more ideas for futuristic types of events. Zach says lower-aged infants have higher levels of death than 18-year-olds. Actually, not quite 18-year-olds, but definitely than 10-year-olds. And I reflected this. So actually, the age where initially the lowest probability of death occurs is 10. So 10-year-olds are still very young biologically, but they don't get into as much trouble as extremely young children or infants. So Zach says, okay, Francois says disaster times 10. So we'll do disaster times 10. Disaster prevention advocacy, that is. So, okay. So before we go on, we still have some disaster prevention advocacy to do, but World War IV has broken out and there is tremendous devastation. The annual probability of death for males of biological ages 16 to 40 increases by 1.5%, not 3%, because nuclear disarmament has been achieved. For everyone else, it increases by 0.5%. So we still have 7 instances of disaster prevention advocacy. Now, we can do anti-war advocacy, though, because of the war. Keep in mind, the death probability is now non-negligible because of the world war that is happening. So Francois says anti-war times 10, and then we'll do the disaster prevention advocacy times 7 that he recommended. So let's do that. Okay, so in 2104, a peace treaty was finally signed to conclude World War IV, and the additional probability of death subsides. So we have 9 more anti-war advocacy instances. And just in time, World War V has broken out in 2105. Those Terrans and Cosmists can't figure out how to get along. So let's keep doing anti-war advocacy. I think we have 6 more instances. And it continues into 2106. It continues into 2107. In 2108, a peace treaty was finally signed to conclude World War V, and the additional probability of death subsides. Uri writes, Terminator GPT. Well, maybe Terminator GPT contributed to World War V. That's a possibility. Okay, World War VI has broken out. And we've got, I think, 3 more instances of anti-war advocacy. But we've got World War VI still continuing. We have 7 instances of disaster prevention advocacy left to go. So I will be using them until somebody tells me that Dorothy needs to do anti-war advocacy. Okay, disaster prevention advocacy has succeeded because in 2116, personal force fields have been developed and can be automatically triggered in the event of a natural catastrophe, protecting the individual from any damage from external elements and thus rendering the probability of death from a natural disaster effectively 0. So Mike Lazine says optimal rejuvenation therapy. I think it's about time for her. Her biological age is down to 4 now, and World War VI continues. So Terminator GPT-2 is wreaking havoc, I suppose. And do we want to do anti-war advocacy? That's the only advocacy that's left in this world, because all of these struggles between Terminator GPT-2 and the anti-AI humans are messing up the world. We do have now a peace treaty, so World War VI is over. Mike says 80 more years and we win. We can do 10 more years of anti-war advocacy. World wars are very frequent now in the age of the AGI singularities, so we are going to keep doing anti-war advocacy. Peace treaty was signed to conclude World War VII. Jason says personal force fields are kind of fun. So
I wonder, do you have uploading your consciousness in this game?
We don't have mind uploading in this game because, well, mind uploading is a response to external causes of death. But keep in mind, we are continuing to do anti-war advocacy, and the death probability is climbing, but very slowly during peacetime. So let's see. Do personal force fields protect against asteroids? In this version of the game, they do. There might be a separate event for asteroids that might overcome personal force fields. Again, that's something we can think about.
It would make space exploration very easy too. You wouldn't need spacesuit, I guess.
So we have now World War VIII breaking out in 2138. So the probability of death is again higher. We can do optimized rejuvenation therapy. So her biological age is down to 10 now. And now we can do anti-war advocacy or rejuvenation therapy. Gamma bursts are suggested by Francois. So in the interests of time, I'm going to be doing anti-war advocacy unless somebody tells me to do rejuvenation therapy. And let's see, a peace treaty was finally signed to conclude World War VIII, but then World War IX began. So Mike Lazine says do rejuvenation therapy. And now the biological age is down to 0. So anti-war advocacy is really what is left for a while. And we've got peace treaty to conclude World War IX in 2149. So again, tell me when you want me to do rejuvenation therapies. Otherwise, we still have world wars breaking out on a frequent basis. World War X started in 2153. It ended in 2155. Again, there could be more color added to the game, customized narratives for each of these wars so that the game could tell you what happened and a little history of the future is generated thereby. So let's see. Anti-war times 50, says Francois. Okay. Let's see what happens.
Also include like Kardashev levels of civilization, since we're at a year that seems like we would have, solar system wide civilization stuff.
Yes, future stages of civilizational advancement could be considered. So Zach says, whenever your biological age hits 22, you should do rejuvenation therapy to get back to age 12 because that's the minimum aging damage. So, okay, Dorothy is back to age 12, and we keep doing anti-war advocacy for a while. Juraj says, natural disasters and pandemics have custom random names and descriptions, so that would be easy to do for world wars as well. We can think of interesting storylines. And Zach says, maybe it would be better when you hit 18 since risk spikes there, so stay at biological age 8. So we've got, actually, chance to rejuvenate her again in 2190. So it's interesting because over time, the anti-war advocacy does reduce the probability of wars arising. And she has been effective in doing that. Now, keep in mind, now she's biologically 24, chronologically 199. So I would say let's do one more rejuvenation therapy for her to celebrate her 200th birthday. Okay, so now she's 200, and her probability of death is very low. Her biological age is 10. And let's do one more instance of anti-war advocacy and see what happens. You survived, finally reaching your goal age. So, yes, Bruce, we did it. And Dorothy Gail is chronologically 200 in the year 2198. We can export this log so that we have this playthrough memorialized. Now, it's possible to continue playing the game. So if you click on continue, we can see what happens next. So she can do more anti-war advocacy. This is the first official win, says Zach. At least the first public live streamed win. Okay, so in 2206, well, actually 2205, the prior year, through the efforts of activists such as Dorothy Gail, the great world peace has been achieved at last. All nations and their governments have forever renounced war as an instrument of policy. Given the moral advances of the past several decades, there is worldwide confidence that the peace will hold. The risk of world war being initiated among humans has been eliminated. So, we are in a world in 2206 where there's no more risk of world wars, including nuclear wars, no more natural disasters, no more pandemics, and there is longevity escape velocity. People can take these optimized rejuvenation therapies to reduce their biological age. So Dorothy can keep going like this. Now her biological age is 4 once again, and she can rest for a year and accumulate some biological age. Zach says, see, Gennady, this is what happens when you have LEV. You just sit around and do nothing forever. Well, that's the thing. It's not going to be nothing. It's going to be a variety of interesting ways to spend one's time, but the game just doesn't encapsulate them quite yet. So we are looking for some creative suggestions as to content. And these could be just interesting future events or works of art that people could see, or life events for the characters, or choices that would affect survival probability in the future. This is build. Yes, this is build 0.6. So it's not yet the 1.0 version that would be made available to everybody, but we are looking for beta testers. So if you want to be a beta tester, I am going to include my email address here. And if you are interested, just send me an email to Gennady Stolyarov II. That's Gennady Stolyarov II at gmail.com. Corche says if he had all this available time, he plans to read books and convert a distant planet into his personal garden. Mike suggests Mars colonization and sentient status for androids. So thank you, Mike. And any other suggestions would be welcome. Zach says luxury, personal development, recreation, and flourishing. Bruce says this game rocks. Thank you very much, Bruce. And Uri points out maybe it would be good to mention modding and how the community can add content. Yes, there is a modding option right now, and it is described within the files for the game. Again, if you want to be a beta tester, try out some of the modding, feel free to contact me, and there will be a document of instructions for how to do it. You can add your own events via the modding. Now, it's still a manual process. We are working on getting a modding interface added. And Jason says, learn an instrument and make music. That's an interesting suggestion as well. Francois says gamma bursts as adverse events. So XP says, could we hear the sounds before the end of the stream? And I'm not sure exactly how to do that via the screen share, because I do have the sound enabled on my end. I just don't see a way to do it without the sound becoming distorted through my audio speakers. But I can describe the sound effects of the game. So there are effects for clicking and for typing. There are also musical compositions that play throughout the game. So these are my musical compositions, as well as versions that Jason Geringer has remastered, which I would say are quite futuristic. So if you want to hear them, become a beta tester, and you will be able to play a version of the game with the sounds. Now, Francois suggests including an alien civilization, alien technology, alien viruses, and alien hostile AI. So we will think about incorporating those. Mike Lazine asks, how will modding work if the game is for Android and iOS in the future? So that's interesting. I think there will need to be a modding interface within the game. So if you see here in the game interface, it's possible to quit the game. Oh, I actually disabled the screen share, unfortunately, but I can run it again and show you where it would appear. Now, right now in the current version, only the play option really does anything. The rest are placeholders, but there will be an options menu and a modding menu. And that modding menu should be available on Android or whatever interface is chosen. And XP says, as for post-LEV gameplay, there could definitely be challenges in keeping the new status quo from devolving back into how it used to be. That's a very good point. And I think that's something that we will consider including. So I am going to try to share the window of the reopened game, and I will show you where you can go. So right now there's nothing here, but you can click on mod, and there will be a modding interface added later on. Also, under options, there will be options, for instance, to toggle the volume on or off, and various other customizations that can be made. So thank you for that question, Mike. And then Uri does point out there should be an interface inside the game, inside the options, for how to do the modding. And Francois says, the Spanish were bringing alien technology, alien viruses. I think he's referring to the colonization of the Americas after 1492. So an interesting suggestion for a scenario of contact with another species that might inadvertently bring in some sort of disease. All right. Thank you very much for everybody who participated in our live demonstration of LEV the game. The time for our salon is almost elapsed. We have about a minute remaining, but I really appreciate the engagement of our viewers. You haven't beta testers even here during this public stream, but again, if you want to be more thorough beta testers and try this game out with many characters, many selections, see what happens under various scenarios, send me an email and I will send you a link to the most current version of the game. Dan Tweed wonders, is the game open source? Yes, the intent is to make it open source, to make it freely available, downloadable for all. It's an educational game, so we want people to learn about longevity, escape velocity as a concept, and if it happens, how it's likely to happen in practice. So I hope all of you observing the playthrough today learned something about longevity escape velocity and gotten a more realistic idea of how it might be implemented. And I hope we get to live some of these futures where we reach longevity escape velocity. And of course, as a result, we live long and prosper.